What if I told you that Russia was once on the verge of breaking apart? When Lenin took power in 1917, minorities and small republics were promised freedom, language rights, and independence. But within just a few decades, Stalin reversed everything. Millions were deported, and Russian became the only language that mattered. Fast forward to 1991, the Soviet Union collapses, and Boris Yeltsin encourages republics to take as much sovereignty as they want. For a short time, they had real power. But under Vladimir Putin, everything changed again. Moscow tightened its grip, and those republics lost nearly all of their independence. This is the story of how Russia's republics went from hope to control, and why it still matters today.
This is Russia, the largest country on Earth with an area exceeding 17 million km. This means its size is almost equal to the entire continent of South America. If we compare its area to the second largest country in the world, Canada, we'll find that Russia is almost double Canada's size. Russia is so vast that it has 11 time zones. This means if it's 1000 p.m. in the east, it's 8 a.m. in the west. It also shares borders with countries very far apart like Norway and North Korea. So Russia is not just big. Russia is very, very big. This is the Russia that you, I, and all of us probably know. But there's another side to Russia that no one knows about and no one talks about. That is, Russia is not just one country. Russia consists of 22 countries within its borders. These countries are completely different from each other. Different in appearance, religion, language, customs, and general lifestyle. They are literally completely distinct peoples. All these peoples live in Russia in their own special places, and these places are independent republics within Russia. There are 22 such republics, and each one of them is considered almost a state within a state. Each has its own president, constitution, flag, and national anthem. The largest among them is the Republic of Yakutia, located in the far east of Russia. This republic has a vast area exceeding 3 million kilometers. Consequently, if considered a country, it would be the 8th largest country on Earth, surpassing Algeria, the largest Arab country. Yakutia is home to approximately 1 million people, about half of whom are Turk-Yakuts and about 38% are Russians. The prevalent language among the population is Yakut in addition to Russian. The people of Yakutia are mostly Christian, but some follow paganism. The capital of Yakutia and its largest city is Yakutsk, a city where almost everything freezes except humans. The average temperature here throughout the year is 8 below 0 C. And in winter, temperatures can drop to 60 below zero. This literally makes the city the coldest major city on Earth. That's why people in markets don't need refrigerators or any storage methods, because certainly 60 below zero will be enough to preserve meat and fish throughout the winter. After winter ends, the residents gather and hold a big celebration celebrating the return of nature, the triumph of life, and the beginning of a new year in the Republic of Yakutia. If we leave Yakutia and head west, we'll find ourselves in the most populous republic, the Republic of Bashkortostan, home to approximately 4 million people. Although Christianity is prevalent in most parts of Russia, the majority of the population here are Muslims, and almost all of them speak Russian in addition to the Bashkir language. Bashkortostan is one of Russia's richest regions because it produces more oil than any other area, providing Russia with approximately 17% of its gasoline and 15% of its diesel fuel. Eventually, the Russian Empire collapsed and the era of the Soviet Union began in 1922. Vladimir Lenin seized power in October 1917. At that time, Russia entered a civil war that lasted for years and claimed millions of lives. Here, the oppressed minorities and peoples in Russia began establishing independent republics. With the establishment of the Soviet Union, there were two types of republics. The republics that formed the Soviet Union, the largest of which was Russia, and the independent republics located within the republics that formed the Soviet Union, most of which were inside Russia. The Soviet Union in its early period under Lenin strongly supported these republics and encouraged minorities to join their republican governments and use their own languages. Here their conditions began to improve significantly for about 10 years. But with the rise of Joseph Stalin to power, the conditions of these peoples gradually began to change. Initially, Stalin continued to support minority independence, but then the situation changed completely, marking a period of minority marginalization and support for everything Russian. Here, these minorities were excluded from government, and millions of people were forcibly displaced. Russian became mandatory in all areas inhabited by minorities. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, the republics that formed the Soviet Union had the right to secede, but the smaller independent republics did not have the same right. At that time, Russia was at its weakest and minorities constituted almost 20% of Russia's population. Here, fears arose that these republics might declare their independence from Russia. That's why Russian President Boris Yeltsin supported the independence of these republics and asked them to take the sovereignty they desired. He made agreements with them for power sharing and joining the Federation. Here, these republics gained greater authority and almost complete control over their natural resources and economic policies. However, after Putin's rise to power, the situation for these republics began to change completely. Putin came to power in 2000. Here, Putin began to modify the political system in Russia and started concentrating power more in Moscow, successfully gaining almost complete control over political and economic decisions. From that time on, these republics gradually began to lose their independence despite their de facto existence.